I think if the Third Reich did focus on Panzer IV production and make much less better tanks, they would win. But luckily, they were stupid. There's a lot of things I could say about that, but I'm not going to go for the low-hanging fruit here. As you can probably guess, I get a lot of comments on my videos. I try to read all of them. Obviously, I do miss a few, but today we're going to be looking at some of the best comments, I guess you could say. They're definitely comments. Of all the comments that I've ever received, these are in fact some of them. So without further ado, let's jump right into it with the first one, coming from White Knights. I love your videos, but you are wrong. That is not a king tiger. Not sure what kind of tank it is. It is German, but it is not a king tiger. Look at the picture. You can tell it is not. Well, that's in reference to this picture, I believe, and as you can tell, it is definitely a king tiger. I don't know what tank you think it is, but it's most definitely a king tiger because you can tell by the way it is. All right, next comment coming from XVXGD. To do Pam's quality, all done with the interview on the only one who can help me with this extreme demon. I will be there at the same time and place, and I'll be there in the morning to see if you can sex. Thanks for the comment. All right, on my America's King Tiger Killer, the Super Pershing video from Martin. The Sherman tank was ineffective against the Nazi German Panzer. History. It took 8 Sherman tanks to destroy 1 Nazi German Tiger. If I had $1 for every time I got a comment or saw a post like this somewhere online, I would have quite a few dollars. Let's put it that way. This is a common misconception, and I'll probably do a whole video on this. I think the Chieftain has done a video on this in the past, or covered this topic in more depth than I could. But the fact that it took 8 or 5 or however many Sherman tanks to kill 1 Tiger is just a complete myth. There are cases, obviously, where a Tiger tank or some strong German tank, let's say, could knock out multiple Sherman tanks as they were advancing into its position. However, that's not always the case. There's actually cases in the early invasion of Normandy where the Sherman tanks were actually able to kill German vehicles, including Panthers, with the short 75, mind you, in greater numbers than they could knock out the American tanks. So I think a lot of this comes from the fact that something like 50,000 Shermans were built and only around like 1,000 something Tigers were built. Or 50,000 Shermans were lost, something along that line. I would have to find the number. If I can, I'll put it up on the screen. But it's a misconception that gets parroted by people all over the place. Yes, the Tiger was strong, but no, the Sherman was not completely incapable of defeating it without having like 500 Shermans rushing towards it in horde tactics. That was something you probably more see on the Eastern Front, not so much the Western Front. Battlefields are not linear. You have tanks, yes, but you also have infantry, aircraft. The tanks have to maneuver on both sides, so the whole 1 tank versus 1 tank scenario rarely ever happened. So that's a long-winded way of saying that this comment is ridiculous. All right, on to the next one. On my M6 Heavy video from Yuri Rasenko, American crews referred to them as Ronsonol coffins. More than once, when asked if it could take German rounds, the answer was in one side, straight through the other. Poor quality, but quantity able to build overwhelmed Germany production. Red Army supply with some. Not well liked. Outclassed by T-32 and T-34. So about the only thing that you said right in this comment is the fact that the M6 was outclassed by the T-32 and T-34, which came about, I think, like over a decade later. Or the better part of a decade later. The M6 never saw combat, which you would know if you watched the video, so the American crews did not refer to them as coffins. German rounds could go through one side out the other, maybe through the side armor of an M6. It was fairly thin, but I doubt it because the Germans use APHE. Poor quality, I don't see anything that indicates that the M6s had poor quality. and the quantity that they were built in was not very much, and the Red Army was never supplied with some. So, watch the whole video before you comment. Thank you. Multi-turreted disasters, the SMK and T-100. Comment from Bart Bowles. Hot take. Most German tanks in World War II had 2 turrets, the main gun turret and the Coppola. Not considering the Coppola a turret is a mistake, since it seduces a simple truth that one turret is good, more turrets is bad, and that's just wrong. I don't understand this comment. I've read it a couple times, and I just don't understand why you would consider a Coppola a separate turret. Yes, there are some instances, like on the M60 or the M48, where they do technically have a turret that could be also a Coppola. It's a little machine gun turret, the thing that the Tonk was made out of, which was from an M60, I believe. The turret on the top was a machine gun Coppola, essentially, and it could turn around. But that was more of like a machine gun. It was more of like a machine gun spot. It wasn't really another turret. I don't know. That's the only situation where this works. In the case of German tanks in World War II, no. The Coppola, I don't even think most of their Coppolas they probably did rotate. But either way, they're just viewports. They don't have any armament in them. The simple truth that one turret is good, more turrets is bad, is a simple truth because it's a fact. It's been proven over the course of tank development. If more than one turret was good, there would be more tanks with more than one turret. You could argue that newer technology could allow multi-turreted setups to be somewhat usable with things like active protection systems or like AI-controlled turrets, but I don't think that that's been done yet as far as I'm aware, and I don't think it's anything that people are pushing for. So I don't understand the insistence on people thinking multi-turrets are a good idea. They were proven that they weren't in the interwar and early World War II period, and I don't think they're ever going to make a comeback. At least not the way that they were. Alright, next comment. From Cow Animations TH. Nice new Curse by Design intro. Thank you. This one was from a while ago. But I think you got paid to say that World of Tanks sponsor. Yeah, that's how sponsorships work. Next question. Oh boy, this is a good one. Why did Germany put Zimmer on their tanks? On that video that did surprisingly well. From Jason Oliveris. Wrong as usual. Good try though. Alchemy plus the looking glass equals enables them to distinguish from a distance through electromagnetics. The Earth is grid. That's all I can say about that. Sir, this is a Wendy's. I don't understand what you're asking me here. Well, okay. Next comment on the same video. Downvote for my NatC Germany. Get with the times. Much like the first archaeological digs were wildly inaccurate, we have much better proof now of what was real versus propaganda. No, we have very much evidence that Germany during World War II was Nazi because, well, that was the name of the people that were in charge. I don't understand how we're finding new evidence and a better proof now of what was real versus propaganda. I don't mean that every single German during World War II was a Nazi, because that's obviously ridiculous. There were people that disagreed with them. However, the ruling party at the time were Nazis. The Third Reich was a Nazi party. So I don't understand what the better proof now is, but do please keep me informed if you know anything else. Next comment. On my French tanker helmets video from No Mercy Inc., tank helmets literally had zero connection to operation of tanks. It's a tank helmet, tanker helmet. How does that have zero connection to tanks? I guess you could say that the tank helmets prevented connection to tanks, as in the crew didn't slam their heads into the tank hull when they were moving. But yeah, that's about all I can say about that one. Next comment. On my Germany's Kugelblitz video from SZ Hobby Workshop, I think if the Third Reich did focus on Panzer IV production and make much less better tanks, they would win. but luckily they were stupid. There's a lot of things I could say about that, but I'm not going to go for the low-hanging fruit here. So, if the Germans focused on Panzer IV production, would they have won the war? No, absolutely not. Could they have done a little bit better, perhaps, and had more vehicles readily available to them? Yes, probably, because for the cost of some of the more heavy projects that they did, they could have built more Panzer IVs. However, by the end of the war, the Panzer IV was kind of getting long in the tooth, and its 75mm gun would have struggled against some of the Russian stuff. They already kind of struggled against the T-34s a little bit, I believe. So there are reasons why Germany went for the better tanks that were very costly. But there's really no way that Germany could have won the war, because when you have both the Red Army on one side with thousands of tanks, the Allies on the other side with thousands of tanks, and you are a single country running out of the ability to even fuel your tanks, it doesn't really matter how many that you have. Even if you had a few more, maybe you could have knocked out a few more Allied or Red Army tanks as they were approaching, but they still would have lost. All right. Oh, here we've got a good one from Disketta25. What about American T-30? There is little to no evidence that it was a real modification outside of a few mentions and 2 likely photoshopped photos. It's highly doubtful for me that it is possible at all to squeeze 155mm cannon in a turret initially designed for 105mm. Well, the response to that would easily be, well, there's pictures of it, and also the fact that it still exists at the, where the heck is that museum? The Army Armor and Cavalry Museum, whatever the heck they call it. I believe it's in Georgia. It's the new one that they're working on, that they have all the American tanks in, with all the T-series of vehicles that still are around. So I responded to him saying that the one still exists, and his reply to that was, then how were they able to fit a 155mm gun into a turret that was originally intended for 105mm at all? Either this is magic, or the designers of the original prototype with a 105mm one should have been shot for sabotage in the form of a deliberately irrational tank layout. Remembering the amount of alterations that are usually required to install a gun 1.5 times larger in caliber, normally this is at least strengthening the hull and total redesign of the turret, like it was with the KV-2, T-44-122, blah 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 blah. The only significant exception I know of is IS, where it was possible to replace the 85mm gun with a 122mm gun relatively quickly, yada yada yada. Yeah, you're kind of barking up the right tree there with your own comment. It's not a fact of that it was magic or that the designers were sabotaging. In some cases, tanks are designed to be able to take larger armaments in their turrets. For one thing, then you can put a smaller gun in there and you'll have more ability to, you can load it easier because you've got more room for the loaders to move around and the other crew. In other cases, you have stuff like the Abrams, which was originally designed to have a 105mm, that was the planned armament, but they made it so that it could accept the 120mm in the future. At least, if I'm remembering correctly, that's what they did. So, in the case of the T-series of heavy tanks, I can't say I've looked into this too much yet. I plan to in the future, but I haven't looked into it just yet. But I would imagine it was one of those two, where either the turret was just large enough where they could fit it in there because maybe the breach of the 155 wasn't actually that much bigger, because in some cases, you'd be surprised, the breaches aren't insanely different in size. It's just the size of the shell, but they probably designed it to fit a larger gun and then could still fit the other guns in it. That would be my guess. Either way, no, they would not have been shot for sabotage for making it so that they could fit a larger gun. That's just ridiculous. All right, a comment from CMZ Nuke. I don't remember exactly which video this was on, but it was the one where I had the hunting class sponsorship. You've got an excellent channel, and I follow it dearly. Kudos for the excellent work you are doing, well documented, illustrated, and commented. Thank you. Needless to say, I fully understand your need to find sponsors, but advertising for this disgusting game? Seriously, hunting does not belong to the civilized world, but to but to mental institutions for seriously deranged individuals, sadists with legal license to kill defenseless animals. I'd gladly hunt hunters. They are sick people who don't deserve less. Spoken like a person who has never set foot outside of a city. There are tons of people around the world that rely on hunting as a way to feed their families. I don't understand. People, I think they can just go to the marketplace and get meat off the shelf and like it's just like grown in a vat somewhere, which they are trying to do that, which is disturbing to say the least. But you have to understand that meat does come from somewhere. And in many of these cases, they are coming from factory farms. If anything, it's less disgusting when people are going out to hunt animals and they're taking only what they need and then they are making use of as much of the animal as possible. Now, I do agree that it is a little disgusting to do things like sport hunting, but in some cases, like you see down south in the United States with things like the massive amount of hogs that they have down there, you kind of just have to go out there and kill them because they're destroying the environment. So it's not just defenseless animals either, because things like those hogs can actually and have killed people. So yes, there are situations where hunting can be seen as a little disgusting, like the people that go out on hunts in Africa and kill animals like that, which in some cases there are legitimate reasons why, but I can see why you could see that as disgusting. But going out and hunting some deer to feed your family, or taking out like one elk in a season to feed your family for the whole year, I don't see how that is something that somebody belongs in a mental institution for. I think you belong in a mental institution if you'd gladly hunt hunters. That's a little bit more psychopathic, if you have to ask me. All right, on to the next comment. All right, from RMS Titanic Gaming on my Fakes of War Thunder video. Hey Cone, only 5 Tiger II SLA-16s existed, and 5 examples of Tiger II 105 were made, but they were later destroyed by the Wehrmacht at Kassel. This feels like the people that say that Japan sunk all their tanks in a lake somewhere, but no, you can't go look for them. So, for the Tiger II SLA, only one operational test vehicle was done, and that was in the hull of a Jagdtiger. There was a Tiger II hull that was modified to accept the SLA-16, which was the diesel engine, if you haven't seen that video, but it was never mounted in there as far as I'm aware, and there's no evidence that it was. So I don't know where you're getting this 5 SLA-16s existed. Don't get your information from War Thunder forums. As for the 5 examples of Tiger II 105, no, the Tiger II 105 was a proposal. It was not even a paper vehicle or even considered. It was a proposal for something that they could potentially do, which they actually couldn't. It was more of just like a, hey, but what if we put a 105 in it? And the Wehrmacht High Command were kind of like, what? No. At least that's what I imagine happened. Next comment. All right, this one was on one of my posts where I was advertising some behind the scenes of just all the video footage I had collected when I was at one of the tank events at the American Heritage Museum. From Boondock Journeyman, he says, clickbait. There is no content. He's spamming the idea as a way to suck in more members. There is no special content. These videos and images are pulled in by bots from freely available sources. Just go to any of the free aggregators. Well, if you have a way to use a bot to pull in random tank videos, please let me know, because that would actually be really helpful when editing videos. But no, I actually went to the tank museum in my car and then recorded on my camera the footage of the tanks driving around. I don't understand how, to some people, it makes more sense that I would use a bot to collect the footage of the tanks driving around, which isn't even that impressive of footage to begin with, just to try to get some more people to give me money. It, like, not everything's a conspiracy, bro. There are things that you can be conspiratorial about, but not me going and recording tank videos. I think there are more evils in the world than that. All right. Hopefully we're getting to the end here. The video is starting to get a little bit longer than I was expecting. On my Stir email video, built for its gun, SPS447 says, If you are going to be truly knowledgeable about your subject, AFVs, then you should know they don't have a chassis, it's a hull, and superstructure is a casement. Well, as far as your superstructure comment, no, it's a casemate, and technically they do have a chassis. That's the bottom of the hull. Yes, the hull you can also use to refer to that, but the chassis is another term that you can use for a vehicle. So I don't know why I have to be truly knowledgeable about that subject when you don't even know what you're talking about. Next comment. On my E100 video, William ZK says, just because the British and USA had limitations in moving super heavy tanks due to rail and crane limitations doesn't mean the Germans had the same issues. These tanks would have been effective. The 200-ton Mouse could be moved and could cross any river or any railway bridge with a special 14-axle carriage. It could cross a river on a pontoon bridge, and it could cross a river by fording by a second Mouse providing electrical power. It required some work by the engineers, but it could be done. The E-Series was of balanced design, with the E-75 and E-100 being breakthrough tanks. In July 1944, Hitler ordered the suspension of work on the super heavy tanks. 6 E-100, escorted by a pack of smaller tanks to protect the flanks, would have been deadly and effective. Ooh, boy. Okay, so just because the British and USA had limitations in moving super heavy tanks does not mean Germany had the same problems. Yes, it does. You can't just somehow magically make it so that you don't have the limitations that come with a 100-plus ton vehicle. The Mouse had to have a special rail carriage built for it that you mention in your own comment. That is because it was limitations of being able to move it without said carriage. If they didn't have that, they wouldn't have been able to move it on the traditional carriages because it just weighed so much it would break them. Yes, it is true that the Mouse could ford a river, at least in theory. I don't think they ever tested it. I mean, yeah, that they did have the fording technology, so I have no doubt that it probably could have. And your last bit about the 6 E-100s escorted by a pack of smaller tanks, that just reads like someone who has literally never seen any sort of like real military stuff. Yeah, you could have them escorted by a pack of smaller tanks as a sort of breakthrough force, but the thing is, they never built 6 E-100s for one thing, and for another, it's not just tank versus tank combat. You have infantry, you have air power, which, yeah, the E-100 would have been pretty strong against any armored force that the Allies or Red Army had at that point. But it doesn't really mean much when the entire sky is filled with P-47s and P-51s that can rain hell down upon you when you're a slow-moving heavy tank. So it could have been deadly and effective, but so could the Jagdtiger have been. In some cases, sure, the Jagdtiger knocked out some Shermans or some other tanks, but they would pretty much just get nuked from orbit by close air support or breakdown when they were trying to retreat. Or in some cases, I think one was turning and it got shot in the side and ammo racked. So nothing is immune to being destroyed by something. Next comment. From our Lord and Savior Bob Luke. No, the All Lies scrapped a huge amount of captured German and Japan materials to hide just how much more advanced many of their equipments were. Let me ask you a question. If they were so advanced, why did they scrap them? Could it be because they weren't that advanced and because they didn't actually see a need to hold on to the technology any longer? Or is it because they wanted to hide how advanced the technology was by making it so that they didn't have access to the advanced technology? I'll let you think about that one. All right. Here we have, I don't know if I can say this one. So this is replying to my comment. I forgot to add the YouTube members at the end of one of my videos, but this guy responds, bunch of people funding a Pinko's Cope video bias against one country, ignores Italy even because bandwagoner anti-fascist. What? Okay. Whatever you say, bro. I don't have any bias against any particular country, except maybe Britain. But, no, I don't have any... I try to keep bias out of my videos, so no, I don't ignore Italy either. I just don't have a lot of information on Italian vehicles. Next comment. From Olsen Julian. Super Pershing was never a Tiger killer. They made it too late to even face them. Fair enough, that's mostly true. Also, more experienced German tankers would have killed a much superior tanks driven by unexperienced American tankers. However, later in war, most of the experienced German experienced tanker were mostly killed and replaced by unexperienced ones. So the terms Tiger killer is a joke. My good man, you do realize you contradicted yourself there. Yeah, sure, more experienced German tankers could have defeated superior tanks driven by unexperienced American tanks. However, the situation was actually reversed. It was mostly unexperienced German tankers made up of like barely 18-year-olds who had almost no experience on these vehicles going up against guys who maybe they didn't have the most experience on tanks, but were driving vehicles that were less prone to breakdowns from not being driven correctly, with better supply lines that could repair the vehicles, and with mostly guys that had actually had some level of experience with the vehicles. So I don't understand your whole comment here. You have two sentences that don't apply to your main point. And regardless, yeah, sure, we don't have 100% proof that the Super Pershing did knock out a King Tiger or even a regular Tiger. But that's what the story says. I don't necessarily believe it. Even in the video I said that there's no confirmation of this. The second use is also a very controversial one. On the 21st of April 1945, in the city of Dessau, the tank engaged in combat with what Gunner Corporal J. Irwin claimed to be a Tiger II. The enemy tank hit the Super Pershing but ricocheted off the armor. Upon returning fire, the Super Pershing punched through the lower plate of the tank, detonating its ammo rack and blowing the turret off. This supposed engagement has been scrutinized over the years, however, with quite a bit of evidence disproving the likelihood that it was a legendary King Tiger on the receiving end that day. Although it is entirely possible for the Super Pershing to destroy one had they encountered each other, the nearest German panzer battalion with Tiger IIs was reportedly 70 miles away from the duel. This leads most to believe it was more likely something like a Panther or even Panzer IV, which was either mistaken for the bigger cat or possibly even exaggerated after the fact. I was just reporting what the guys who were using the vehicles said that they did. It may not be true. I don't know. I was not there. I'm just giving you the best information I can. Okay, moving on, we have a comment from over on Odyssey, which if you don't follow me there, I recommend doing so. You can find a link to that in the description. I don't post anything extra there, but it's a nice backup, and I really do like the website. It's sort of like YouTube, but in some ways better, and they're doing a lot over there, so if you haven't checked it out yet, I do recommend it. Anyways, on to the comments. Never heard of the tank, but you sound like a typical Redditor. Them's fighting words. Yeah, video games are not real, ConeOfArc. It's actually dangerous to think otherwise. Just ask your buddies in Ukraine. To which I reply, what? And then he goes, 549 in the video. All video games are 100% fiction. As for your argument against the tank, you are denying the existence of the tank based on video game stats in a fake article. Come on, man. Clearly the video game would not be the primary source material. Referencing video game stats then saying, these guys are stupid, the video game is not real, is cute. How old are you? This is on my E79 video, bro. The reason the primary source material for that video was coming from a video game was because that's where the tank came from. I didn't just go and find pictures of the tank in service and then be like, oh, look at all these idiots. They think this is real because this video game has stats. No, I was showing you the stats and everything from the video game and then how people had somehow extrapolated that and made it into a vehicle that actually was like being worked on by the Germans in World War II. I don't disagree that video games are 100% fiction. I never said anything to the contrary. So I don't understand. I don't know if you think that this is real and you think that I'm using like bad information or something, but like go do some research for yourself. All my sources are linked in the description for my videos. Next comment. From Reaper Tango 19. It's not 10.5 centimeter. It's called a 105 millimeter. To which I reply, you realize that's the exact same size, right? And then he replies back to me, you realize millimeters are smaller and more precise, and also the correct term for this shell? I'll let the Germans know who referred to it as 10.5 centimeter, but okay. Yes, technically millimeters are smaller and more precise of a measurement, but when they literally call the thing 10.5 centimeter, I'm going to call it 10.5 centimeter, so deal with it. All right, next comment from Jonathan Milner. Here's a what if. What if Germany had taken the basic concept of the R35, made it so an 88mm cannon could be mounted on, and made it super mass producible? That would be a Germany far harder to beat than the one we actually fought that had excellent tanks, but were hopelessly outproduced. The closest comparison that Germany actually did along these lines was the Stug 3, and that was clearly the most effective armored vehicle of the entire war for Germany. Yeah, I can kind of see where you're coming from, but the whole thing of mounting an 88mm on the R35, I don't know how you expect to do that. They would have been better off focusing on things like the Stug 3 in some aspects, I suppose, but you couldn't mount. There's a picture here. This shows a R35 or an H35, probably an H35, and it has, I believe, a 75mm on top. These things I don't think were particularly good. They used them on the Western Front, and it was kind of just because they didn't have anything else to use. To retool to build a tank that was, by that point in the war, like 5 or 10 years out of date, just to somehow mount an 88mm cannon on top of it, I don't think would work very well. Look at the Sturr Emil. It had a great gun. The 128mm gun could kill anything that it encountered on the battlefield. But the thing broke down constantly because it weighed way more than the drivetrain could handle. 88mm guns are not light. They are, I think, well over a ton. And you're putting that on a tank that is designed to have a one-man turret and a 37mm armament, if I remember correctly. That weighs probably like 200 pounds, if that. How are you planning to have this tank not be going at like 1 kilometer an hour with all this weight and the full crew that it would take to serve that gun? I mean, I could see them maybe doing it as a last-ditch effort like they did with the Hotchkiss vehicles, but it would not have been something like the Stug 3. Okay, we got quite a comment from Andrew Forsyth here. This is highly incorrect. I'm going to recreate this for everybody. Chrysler GM did not build 2 Abrams, did not Ford design the apron. Ford actually built the apron. This is correct. How do I know this? Because a simple fact is the first set of Abram was built. Ford Motor Company was the one who made the first prototype with the Tour-by engine. The tank can actually reach up to 120 miles per hour. If the governor was delete, yes, it can go 120 miles per hour. United States government did not set Chrysler or GM because it fell horribly more than once. They give you information because they don't want to correct information put out there. The armor design is all incorrect as well. He's telling you the wrong information. Is uranium armor is on the front of the turret, in front of the armor, and layers quarter thick all the way around the tank for design uranium armor as well because of the Cold War. This is how the apron was built, so don't be deceived by this person. GM, a Chrysler, never built tanks. They had fell horribles in the First World War II. Your tank was poorly designed. The government did not turn for them to tanks. Ford designed the perfect tank. The first Sherman tank was built by Ford. If you want to know the history about the Jeep, Ford designed the Jeep. It was called the Jeep Willie Chrysler. Just bought the Jeep from Ford, but every Jeep he sold Ford get 50% of the profit. That's why you see Jeep cost so much today. That was a lot of words with not a lot of punctuation that said absolutely nothing. I don't know that there is any proof that Ford built any Abrams, and it was yes, Chrysler and GM that were the ones that were in the original program for that. Um, there's a lot of stuff that I did wrong in that Abrams video, and I'll probably remake it at some point. Same with my Leopard 2 video, but none of those things that you talked about in there, I don't think were the ones that I got wrong. I hope you guys didn't just have your brains melt from me reading that. All right, next comment from Fizzy Elf. That's not the full truth. While some were burned by the Japanese, you also gotta remember the US was burning half of Japan with firebombing raids. And then after the war, a lot of Japanese prototypes and the like was thrown in the scrap because of a mix of racism and not knowing the importance. Quite the opposite, actually. The importance of outdated vehicles at the time when they were captured was basically negligible. After the vehicles were captured and then they were taken back to Aberdeen or wherever they were, Bovington, the Kubinka, and then they were tested, after that, the value of them was essentially nothing more than the scrap value. Yes, nowadays those vehicles are worth a lot of money, but at the time, they were outdated technology that really didn't serve any purpose other than just to sit around gathering dust or rust depending on where they were stored. Unfortunately, yes, we did lose a lot of vehicles because of that, and they were cut up and scrapped. But to say that it was because of racism or not knowing the importance, I don't even know how you can consider scrapping a vehicle just because it was Japanese to be racism. That's just ridiculous. But not knowing the importance, it's just they weren't important. Nowadays, they kind of still aren't in all, like, having a Hago in your museum, it's important as a piece of history, but it's not an important thing, if that makes any sense. It's not something that you can take and really go and use in combat. Yes, you could, because a tank is better than no tank, but it's not like an Abrams or something modern that you could take out into the battlefield. They're just not important anymore. Okay, so unfortunately my camera ran out of battery, although I only had like one comment left, so I'm just going to call it a video for there. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. It turned out to be a lot longer than I was expecting, so hopefully it didn't get too boring and you enjoyed the entire video. If you want to see another video like this, let me know, and I will be sure to be able to collect a bunch of these really stupid comments that I get so that I can share them with you. If you liked the video, please like and potentially subscribe, but check out my other videos first because not all my videos are like this one. And yeah, if you liked the video, also support me by getting one of these epic shirts. You can find a link below. I'm also moving those over onto my new website, www.ConeOfArc.com, and you can buy them directly from there. I currently have one design, and I'll be moving more to there later as I get them sized and everything correctly. I have to order samples to make sure that they don't look like crap, so I just want to make sure that you guys aren't buying crap. Yeah, that's I think about it. I'm rambling a little bit here because I didn't expect my battery to die, but I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you with some more regular content in the coming weeks. This is kind of more of a filler video so that it gives me time to get scripts and stuff done. I know you guys don't like the shorter videos, and I don't like to put them out too much, but sometimes it's just what happens because it takes time to write the other scripts, things come up, more information comes out, and I have to add things in. So sometimes a 5-minute video is in fact all you can get because it's a last-minute rushed video. It's not something I've been working on for weeks. So just because it takes me a week to get a video up and it's 5 minutes doesn't mean that it took a week to make that 5-minute video. So anyways, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.